Thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Brawley Arts and Amy, for that beautiful and inspiring performance. It's true that arts and policy and advocacy and just talking to your friends, they all play a role in inspiring action to change the world for the better. Utah Clean Energy exists to tackle the greatest challenge of our time, climate change. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to talk to you all about tonight. My first instinct was that I should try to impress you by listing many of the accomplishments and wins that Utah Clean Energy has made towards a healthier, more stable climate. Don't get me wrong, this is a fundraiser, and I'm sure we'll find a way to sneak a few in. But then it feels wrong, even irresponsible, to not acknowledge what we're all witnessing, what we're feeling as we cope with the consequences of climate change. But that said, I have also seen firsthand what extraordinary things we can accomplish when we come together. I want to amplify the opportunities for profound and positive change and leave you and fuel you with a sense of urgency and agency to work with us, to scale up, to speed up the efforts to curb emissions. We need to do it faster and bigger than ever before. And so to help me accomplish this goal, I've invited Utah Clean Energy's climate scientist and energy analyst, Dr. Logan Mitchell, to join me to help paint the picture of our climate urgency and climate opportunity.
Thank you, Sarah. It is wonderful. Thank you. It is wonderful to be here tonight, and it's amazing to be part of the Utah Clean Energy team. I am an atmospheric scientist. I've spent many years studying climate change, and it's all too true that we're not where we need to be in terms of decarbonizing our economy. The truth is, we're faced with two divergent realities at the same time. On the one hand, not a day goes by that we aren't inundated with the disastrous effects of climate change. We're witnessing catastrophic flooding in Libya and Greece, massive wildfires across Canada, marine heat waves that are bleaching coral reefs in the Caribbean, and record-breaking heat around the world, and so much more. These impacts are only getting worse as temperatures warm. But on the other hand, and at the very same time, climate and clean energy solutions are exponentially increasing here in Utah and across the world, and more people than ever are rising to meet the climate challenge. We are in a race, and to put it bluntly, we're behind. And it's going to take a huge effort to catch up to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. But all too often, people get caught up in either one of these realities. Either they feel despair about all the impacts we're seeing, or they lean into techno-optimism and think that some magical technology is going to come along and save us all, and we don't actually need to do anything. But we need to hold both of these realities in our minds at the same time, both the devastating impacts and the exciting accelerating momentum to solve this crisis. If we can do it, we'll harness the urgency and leadership and optimism that ignites us to drive action at the scale and pace necessary to win this race.
Thanks, Logan. So let's take a minute to talk about some of the many things we have to be optimistic about.
Well, Sarah, for starters, the feds are rolling out the most ambitious investment in combating climate change in U.S. history.
And Utah's biggest utility, Rocky Mountain Power, announced early retirement of coal plants and the largest, most ambitious commitment to renewable energy, energy storage, and energy efficiency in its history.
Well, that's cool. We're working to bring millions of dollars to Utah to help low-income families take part in the energy transition and to help address historic environmental injustice.
And we're heading into the transportation transformation. The number of electric vehicles on the road has more than doubled since 2021 in Salt Lake County alone.
And going electric isn't just for cars. All-electric home building is catching on along with net zero buildings, and our homes and buildings are going to be fossil fuel free.
That's right, and don't forget the Climate Innovation Center. It will be one of the state's most energy efficient, all-electric, and zero-emission buildings, and also Utah Clean Energy's new headquarters. Opens in April. I told you we'd sneak some wins in. These are just a snapshot of some of the work and the wins that have been made possible by all of you and Utah Clean Energy's team of experts. But we are far from done. We will only win the climate race if we take this momentum and double down our collective efforts.
And that's really the catch. While we have set things in motion, we have to build unprecedented amounts of new clean energy and update our energy grid, and fast. We are in the deployment decade. Can the solutions ramp up fast enough to beat the climate consequences?
I believe we can ramp up fast enough. Over the years, and yes, in part thanks to Utah Clean Energy being a persistent and powerful voice, there has been a sea change in awareness, not only about the impacts of climate change, but the technologies, the economics, and the abundance of solutions. I truly believe that Utah can be the conservative state that leads on climate. We have been climbing this mountain for decades, and we are getting closer to the summit. But Logan is right, time is not on our side. The reality is we have to transition our entire energy system, the built environment, transportation system, and more, reducing our emissions 15% per year.
And that's the crux of the challenge. We know what we have to do, and we have the tools to do it. That is great news. But we can't assume that just because we have the solutions that we're going to deploy them fast enough. 15% is an incredibly fast pace. Winning the climate race is what this decade is all about, and it's going to take all of us working on it.
So as hard as it gets, we can't forget what's at stake, nor can we give in to pessimism. This is where I want to leave you with the mindset of stubborn optimism. You may have heard of it. In essence, it's the idea that optimism is not blind to the realities that we face. Optimism is a choice and a necessary input for solving big problems. Cristina Figueres, who you may remember was the lead negotiator for the Paris Agreement, coined the phrase in relationship to climate action, stubborn optimism. She says, some will say that it is too late, too difficult, that making the enormous changes we need to make now is impossible. But impossible is not a fact, it is an attitude, and our attitudes are under our control. At Utah Clean Energy, we have the mindset of stubborn optimism.
We are grounded in the realities of this challenge.
But we are committed and steadfast that failure is not an option. Collectively, we must face the climate challenge head on by moving solutions like never before. I'm so grateful that you're on this journey with us, and thank you all for adopting a mindset of stubborn optimism.